This episode of the Serialholic contains descriptions of disturbing graphic content which may be offensive to some people. Listener discretion is advised. Wendy Caulfield, 16, left her foster home on July 8, 1982. She was found by two boys on July 15th in the Green River. Giselle Lavorne, 19, last seen leaving her apartment on July 17, 1982. Her remains were found on September 25th near an apple tree in Des Moines Creek Park. Deborah Bonner, 23, last seen on July 25th, 1982. Her remains were found on August 12th in the Green River. Marcia Chapman, 31, she left her apartment on August 1st, 1982. A fisherman found her in the Green River on August 15th. She left behind 3 children. Cynthia Hines, 17. She was leaving a convenience store along the SeaTac Strip on August 11th, 1982. The same fisherman found her on August 15th, only a few feet from Chapman. Opal Mills, 16. She was a junior in high school and was last heard from by her parents when she called from Angle Lake Park on August 12, 1982. She was found by police on the shore of the Green River, 30 feet away from Chapman and Hines. Terry Milligan, 16, went missing from Highway 99 on August 29, 1982. She was found by police on April 1, 1984. Mary Meehan, 18, last seen by her boyfriend leaving their apartment along the SeaTac Strip on August 29, 1982. Police found her partially buried remains on November 13, 1983. She was 8.5 months pregnant. Deborah Estes was a 15-year-old runaway who vanished on September 20th, 1982. Workers found her remains while digging a hole for a new playground at an apartment complex on May 30th, 1988. Linda Rule, 16, was heading towards a Kmart department store when she disappeared on September 26, 1982. Construction workers found her remains in a shallow ditch on January 31st, 1983. She was not originally included in the Green River investigation until Ridgway's confession. Denise Bush, 23, went missing on October 6, 1982, and was found on June 12, 1985. Shonda Summers, 17, missing since October of 1982, was found August 11, 1983, near an apple tree just north of SeaTac Airport. Shirley Sherrill, 18, disappeared from Seattle's Chinatown in late October of 1982. Police found her remains in Tigard, Oregon on June 14, 1985. Rebecca Marrero, 20, was last seen leaving the Western Six Motel along Highway 99 on December 3, 1982. Her skull was found on December 21, 2010, in the same vicinity as the remains of Maria Malvar. Rebecca was not originally included in the Green River investigation, nor did Ridgway include her in his 2003 confession. Upon her discovery, Ridgway confessed to her murder, making her his 49th confirmed victim. Colleen Brockman, 15, vanished on Christmas Eve, 1982. Her remains were discovered on May 26, 1984, with her braces still intact. Sandra Major, 20, originally known as Jane Doe B-16, went missing the same day as Colleen. Her remains were discovered on December 30th, 1985, and she was not identified until June of 2012. Alma Smith, 18, went missing from Highway 99 on March 3, 1983. She was found April 2, 1984, in the woods along Star Lake Road. Dolores Williams, 17, disappeared from a hotel along Highway 99 in March of 1983. Her remains were discovered March 31, 1984, in the woods along Star Lake Road. Gail Matthews, 23, was last seen sitting in a pickup truck with a middle-aged white man on April 10, 1983. She was found by two people searching for a lost pet on September 19, 1983, at the base of a fir tree along Star Lake Road. Andrea Childers, 19, disappeared from a Seattle bus stop on April 14, 1983. She was found 6 years later in 1989 near the SeaTac Airport. Sandra Gabbert, 17, was last seen along the SeaTac Strip on April 17, 1983. Her remains were found in the woods on April 1, 1984, along Star Lake Road. Kimikai Pitzer, 16, went missing in April of 1983 when she was last seen entering a pickup truck. Her skull was found in December of 1983. Her body was found about 100 yards away at the base of a steep embankment 2 years later. Maria Malvar, 18, entered a pickup truck and vanished on April 30, 1983. Ridgway led police to her remains in September of 2003. Carol Christensen, 21, finished her shift at the SeaTac Tavern on May 3, 1983 and disappeared. She was found on the 8th of that month in a wooded area of Maple Valley. Martina Athorley, 18, was last seen along Highway 99 on May 22, 1983. She was found November 14, 1984, in the woods off of Highway 410. 1 day later, Cheryl Wims, 18, disappeared on her birthday on May 3, 1983. Her remains were found along with 2 other victims north of the SeaTac Airport on March 22, 1984. Yvonne Antosh, 19, vanished from Highway 99 on May 31, 1983. Hunters found her remains in the woods on October 15, 1983. Carrie Royce, 15, went missing in June of 1983. Police found her remains down an embankment off of Star Lake Road on March 10, 1985. Constance Neon, 21, disappeared June 8, 1983. She was discovered October 27, 1983, in a vacant lot just south of the SeaTac Airport. Kelly Ware, 22, was last seen on July 18, 1983. Her remains were found about 100 feet away from Constance. Tina Thompson, 22, went missing on July 25, 1983. Her concealed remains were discovered by police on April 20, 1984. April Boutram, 17, vanished in August of 1983. Ridgway led police to her remains in August of 2003. Debbie Abernathy, 26, disappeared September 5, 1983. She was found by an elk hunter on March 31, 1984, along a logging road. Tracy Winston, 19, missing since September 12, 1983, was found headless near the base of some trees at Cottonwood Grove Park, which runs along the Green River. Her skull was found in November of 2005, several miles away from her body. Maureen Feeney, 19, previously worked in a daycare. She disappeared from Seattle on September 28, 1983. Her remains were found in May of 1986. Mary Sue Bello, 25, vanished from Seattle on October 11, 1983. She was discovered October 12, 1984, along Highway 410. Pammy Avant, 16, left her mother's home in Seattle on October 26, 1983, never to be heard from again. Ridgway led police to her remains in August of 2003. Delise Plager, 22, disappeared October 30, 1983. She was found by a person gathering moss along I-90 on February 14, 1984. Kimberly Nelson, 21, was sitting at a bus stop on Highway 99 when she vanished on November 1, 1983. Her remains were found on June 13, 1986, along Interstate 90. Lisa Yates was last seen in December of 1983. Her skeletal remains were discovered on March 13, 1984, off of Interstate 90. Mary West, 16, left her aunt's house on February 6, 1984 and disappeared. She was found in the woods of Seward Park on September 8, 1985. Cindy Ann Smith, 17, was last seen in March of 1984. 2 children found her remains at the bottom of a ravine in June of 1987. Patricia Barzak, 19, went missing on October 17, 1986 after being spotted walking along Highway 99. Her skull was found by a road maintenance worker in February of 1993. Roberta Hayes, 21, left the Portland, Oregon jail never to be seen alive again. Her skeletal remains were found along Highway 410 on September 11, 1991. Marta Reeves, 37, and a mother of 4, called her estranged husband asking to borrow some money and then was never heard from again. She was found on September 20, 1990, along Highway 410. Patricia Yellowrobe, 38, went missing at the beginning of August in 1998 and was found a few days later on August 6, 1998. Her death was originally believed to be accidental until Ridgway confessed to her murder. Jane Doe B. 10, an unidentified white female, described as being about 15 years old, was found in March of 1984. Jane Doe B-17, an unidentified female of unknown race, was believed to be aged 14 to 18 years old. She was discovered on January 2, 1986. Partial remains that were discovered in a separate area in February of 1984 have been linked to Jane Doe B-17. Jane Doe B-20, an unidentified female of unknown race, was believed to be aged between 13 and 24 years old. She was discovered in August of 2008. May they rest in peace. Serial killers.
I'm not a big serial killer, by the way. Eight people, that's nothing.
Murder.
I wouldn't let me go, no.
Because you kill again.
More than positive.
Mystery. I'm Dave Jari, and I am the Serialholic. To catch a serial killer, you must learn about the serial killer, how they operate, what drives them, why do they do what they do. And the best person to catch a serial killer is another serial killer. This is what happened when a series of women disappeared and their lifeless, decomposing bodies began showing up along the Green River and the surrounding area in Washington state. When the Green River Task Force was created, two members of the task force, Robert Keppel and Dave Reichert, began interviewing psychologists to try and get an understanding of the motivation this killer had, and in turn, lead them directly to him. This would take some time and numerous interviews with several people. Their path would bring them all the way to Florida to speak to another Washington serial killer, Ted Bundy. In 1984, Bundy had already been in prison for 6 years on death row for the Chi Omega murders and the murder of 12-year-old Kimberly Leach. Keppel and Reichert interviewed Bundy because of the similarity between the Green River murders and his own, and felt he could provide them with some insight. During one interview, Bundy said that the killer was most likely revisiting the dump sites to have sex with the corpse. With this information, police were able to collect valuable evidence, and while Bundy's assistance didn't lead to an immediate capture of the killer, the meetings proved to be valuable in understanding the mind of the killer. It took 17 more years before they could apprehend a man who lived in everyone's nightmare as the Green River Killer, but in reality, he'd go by the name of Gary Ridgway. Gary Ridgway's 19-year reign of carnage labeled him as the most prolific serial killer America has ever seen, in which he left the state of Washington and parts of Oregon littered with death. In an attempt to make sense of his murderous ways, we must first learn about his childhood. He was born February 8, 1949 in Salt Lake City, Utah, the second son to domineering Mary and overzealous Thomas Ridgway. His mother would constantly berate her husband and children, and Ridgway would bear witness to these incessant tirades. His father was highly critical of prostitution in the area, and at a very young age, Ridgway would listen to his father's rants of the disgust he felt towards these women. Ridgway had a bedwetting problem into his early teens, and his mother would insist on washing his genitals each time he did. He would later say that he had a conflicting relationship with his mother. On one hand, he would fantasize about killing her. On the other, he was sexually attracted to her. Ridgway's teen years weren't much better. Classmates in high school would label him as cordial, but forgettable. He struggled in school and had a low IQ of 82 and was diagnosed with dyslexia. Ridgway would have to repeat the same grade twice in order to graduate. At the age of 16, he lured a 6-year-old boy into the woods near his home and repeatedly stabbed him, puncturing his liver. The boy survived and heard Ridgway laugh as he was leaving. He also heard him say, "I always wondered what it would be like to kill someone." After high school, Ridgway married his 19-year-old girlfriend, Claudia Craig, and was sent off to Vietnam as a member of the U.S. Navy. While there, Ridgway would turn to the abundance of prostitutes that work in the area where he was stationed. His promiscuous appetite would find him with the sexually transmitted disease, gonorrhea. Regardless of this, Ridgway would continue to have unprotected sex with these women. Craig also had an extramarital affair, and the marriage was over before they reached their first anniversary. When Ridgway returned from Vietnam, he got a job working at Kentworth Truck Factory as a painter, a job he would hold for 30 years. In 1973, he married his second wife, Marcia Brown. During this marriage, Ridgway became a religious fanatic, often going door to door, unsolicited, preaching about the Bible, and would often read scripture aloud in public and at work. His disdain for prostitutes grew as well, as he would aggressively condemn each one, but this was all hypocritical. Ridgway would solicit their services even though he was publicly criticizing them. Marcia would later say that Ridgway would demand sex from her several times a day and would often want to do it in public places. She also claimed that he choked her after a heated argument. After both Ridgway and Brown had extramarital affairs, they divorced in 1981. Now with the freedom to do as he pleased, Ridgway would turn to the same sex workers he despised, but this time around, things would escalate to horrific extremes. Old Highway 99 weaves its way through SeaTac, Washington, adjacent to its airport, and in 1982 was sprawling with topless bars, one-hour room rentals, and prostitution. Not far from the Strip, as the locals would call it, lies the Green River. On August 15th of that year, Robert Ainsworth began his day of fishing like any other. He would climb into his rubber raft and drift down the Green River. This day, however, would be a bit different. He encountered a middle-aged man standing on the banks of the river. In typical fisherman banter, Ainsworth called out to the man and asked if he had caught anything. The man stated he did not. As the man turned to walk back to his truck, he asked if Ainsworth found anything. Ainsworth thought that the question was a bit odd, until a short moment later, his life would change forever. What he thought was a mannequin stuck in a fallen underwater tree, Ainsworth went to retrieve it out of the water. Doing so, he tipped his raft, fell in, and found himself staring into the lifeless eyes of a woman, with her arm waving with the current as if to be begging for help. Within seconds, a second dead woman appeared. Panicked, Ainsworth swam to shore and summoned a passing bicyclist and asked him to call police and explain his gruesome story. Police arrived and after a search of the area, discovered a third body, this one on the shore about 30 feet from the other two. This victim was later identified as 16-year-old Opal Mills, who was killed less than 24 hours earlier. The other two victims, Marcia Chapman, 31, who was reported missing 2 weeks prior, and Cynthia Hines, 17, was in the water for only a few days. These would not be the first discoveries in and along the Green River. About a week earlier, the body of 23-year-old Deborah Bonner was discovered slumped over a log, and a month prior, the remains of 16-year-old Wendy Lee Caulfield were found floating in the river. The women were all killed by strangulation and had pyramid-shaped rocks inserted into their vaginas. The state of Washington had another serial killer on the loose, and it would take several years and several more bodies before police would be able to put an end to it. On the 15th of September 1982, another young girl would be reported missing. Mary Meehan, just 18 years old and a daughter of strict Catholic parents from the prominent Seattle neighborhood of Bellevue, vanished. She had been living in a motel with her boyfriend along the Strip, and what makes her story that more heart-wrenching is that she was 8.5 months pregnant. 5 days later, 15-year-old Deborah Estes was seen for the last time alive, and the police were nowhere closer to discovering who their killer was. They did collect evidence from the scenes, including semen samples, but a lot of the crime scenes were difficult to navigate. Ridgway would deliberately litter the area with used gum and cigarette butts that he collected from other people to throw off the police. The FBI would label him as an organized killer, whose acts are deliberate, planned, and absent of all feelings other than the excitement they feel when they revisit their dumping grounds. Ridgway would place his victims in clusters and would prioritize them. If they put up a fight, they were special, and Ridgway would place them in areas of prominence. Only the special ones were put in clusters. If they didn't fight back, he would dispose of them like trash. Getting bolder, Ridgway was nearly caught on April 30th, 1983, when he kidnapped 18-year-old Maria Malvar. Maria and her boyfriend were eating at a diner when he stepped out to use the payphone. When he returned, Maria was missing. Her boyfriend went back outside to see if he could spot Maria, and noticed she was in the passenger seat of a pickup truck that was driving away. Maria's boyfriend followed them until they reached an intersection, and he lost them. He returned to Maria's family's house, and they all went out looking for her. Early the next morning, they located the truck in a small residential neighborhood just a few blocks from the strip. They contacted the police, and a sergeant arrived to knock on the front door of Gary Ridgway's house. In typical sociopathic fashion, Ridgway came off as confused and naive as he told the sergeant he was home all night and had no idea what he was talking about. The sergeant took him at his word and never followed up. Ridgway would lead police to her remains in 2003. He had committed 46 confirmed murders from 1982 to 1985, when he met Judith Mawson in a bar. She described her first impression of Ridgway as handsome, polite, and he treated her like a lady. She would become his third wife in 1988. Although she claims that Ridgway made her smile every day, Judith did admit it was odd when she first went to his house and there was carpet and furniture missing, including his bed. He would explain it off as the kids ruining the carpet and an ex-girlfriend had taken the furniture, and she had believed him. Ridgway never let off any suspicions that he was a serial killer. He was always loving, always attentive, and always home when he was supposed to be, except for a few occasions. Judith recalls only a handful of times during their 13-year marriage that Ridgway left early for work or came home late, but he would say it was either for overtime or a union meeting. Ridgway never put off any red flags, even though he killed 3 women while he was with Judith. Their life would come to a crashing halt on November 30th, 2001. Literally. Police crashed through her front door as she waited for Ridgway to come home for lunch. She was placed face down on the floor while police searched the house. Ridgway was already in custody, having been arrested on his way home. For 2 more years, Ridgway would manipulate his wife into believing he was innocent. That is, until Ridgway's full confession in 2003 to avoid the death penalty in exchange for life in prison. Although Ridgway has been convicted of 49 murders, he has confessed to 71, and there are possibly more. As in his words, "There are so many, I can't remember." This episode of Serialholic was written and produced by me, Dave Jari. All music for this episode is licensed through Epidemic Sound. Please visit me at theserialholic.com, where you can read my profile, connect with me on Facebook, Instagram, and chat with me in Messenger. As always, stay tuned for more episodes, and thank you for being a Serialholic.